Hey guys, it's Martin Cliffe here with a gear slash pedalboard rig rundown. I know we're not allowed to call it that, but that kind of thing. Just to look at the changes to my pedalboard and what's kind of going on really. Um, so I recently moved to I've been using pedal trains for a long time, but this is the Nova 18 or something along those lines. Novo 18. And what I like it for is it's got the fifth rail and these rails are closer together, which means I can bring this row of pedals closer to this row of pedals. It's slightly more elevated. So that's the first change. You'll also see that my power supply here is mounted to the top, and it's not a Videolab pedal power, it is a Decibel 11 Hot Stone Deluxe. The reason it's on the top is just again for ease of if anything comes out, it means that I don't have to screw brackets into the bottom or any of that kind of thing. And this I like because it's got two of the outputs aren't just 250 milliamps, they're 400 milliamps, which means that I can power the timeline much happier from one of them, and then the other one has got they've got these high outputs have got 9 volt and 12 volt outputs, which means that I'm powering the Shiba drive from 12 volts, and then the 9 volt output on the same thing is going to the Ditto looper, and that just enables me then to I've got a Diago isolator transformer thing, which is a cool little device I've had for years and never really used, and it just isolates the audio so that I don't get any crosstalk between the two. So the signal comes in at the Koji comp, which with everything else off. Is a compressor. Without that on, we're getting so it just kind of evens things up. No level boost particularly, except on very quiet things. Pulls down loud things. It's set pretty even, pretty flat. Mix is about sort of 130, so it's more compressed signal than uncompressed signal, but the compression is only halfway up. And the attack is like 10 o'clock, so and the level is set, as I say, at pretty much unity. It's always difficult to get it exactly at unity because it depends how loud you play. That's the nature of how a compressor works. One thing I will point out at this point is that I am using these Damasio jumper cables for my cables these days. I've used Evidence Audio and more recently lava cables on my main board. The reason I went with these is they're really rugged, they're very low profile, and the way that they make them is really good, because basically the jack, when they construct it, it's sealed onto the cable, so it can't break. I've not had any issues. I've got no real problems with lava or Evidence. I still use my lava curly retro coil cable from my guitar to the pedal board, but that is the only current lava cable on the rig. There was a bit of uncertainty a month or so ago when strange things were happening with the company. Thankfully that's all gone by the by, and it's all returned back to normal, but yeah, that did kind of trigger alarm bells, I guess, to a certain extent. So and also the Lava ELC cables, the big ones that I previously used from Pedalboard to amp, are a bit thick and awkward, and I actually prefer slightly the tone of the Planet Waves American stage cables, which is what I've got going from, can't quite see in picture, but basically the 4 cables that go from the pedal board to the amp are those, because they're a bit thinner, a bit more flexible, and easily replaced, because I can just buy them in any Tom Lee Music here in Hong Kong. So from the Koji comp, it then goes to the Sonic Research Turbo Tuner, ST200. The new version is the ST300, but this works fine for me. And it basically functions on a mute switch and a very accurate tuner. Really like that one. And then from there it goes to my trusty Mofo Vibe that I've had since 2011. And that kind of does all those cool, vibey, phasey kind of things. Gets close enough for live use to a kind of Leslie simulation at the higher end, and just puts me in kind of Dave Gilmour mode in the low end. The only thing I don't like about this, and I've never liked about this, is the hardest to press switch in the world. So I'm considering two options. That one is just to replace the switch. I have some spare 3-pole double throw switches because I need to replace one still in my Fulltone 70 BC. So I may swap one of those out, or I may experiment with a company called Barefoot Buttons, who make things that kind of slot onto the foot switches and give you a larger area to hit. Ostensibly so it's not as painful when you're playing barefoot, but also it would then help with that awkward switch. From the Mofo Vibe then we come to the Rufus Fuzz, which I always use on the red mode, but it's set reasonably, it's only set about halfway up the fuzz control. And it's really sensitive to the guitar dynamics, so that that's an 8. So that's pretty cool, and if I want to do any really kind of fun stuff and get kind of infinite singing, almost synth-like textures, if I throw the Koji comp on before it, it'll make it noisy, but it also makes it do some big kind of sounds, because it takes away that touch sensitiveness of the Rufus, but so that's a pretty cool kind of option. I'm going to cover next is the Cocoa Boost Reloaded. I've swapped the knobs for the black ones. Didn't really like the clear knobs, so a couple of my other Sir pedals have now got clear knobs instead that aren't on this board. So the Cocoa Boost Reloaded is basically a mid push. It's not set particularly high, but it's enough to drive. And looks like that's distorting the input of the recorder. I very rarely use it like that. That kind of, it's set. This is the boost control when it's on the green mode, so that can be ignored. I use the frequency control all the way to the right with the mid Q about 1 o'clock, and the mid boost knob around about 10. And it's primarily used to drive the next pedal in the chain, which is the Shiba Drive Reloaded. It's a Shuba driver reloaded on its own. Is my overdrive sound. It's bright, it's kind of brash, it's not too gainy. But when it's goosed by the Cocoa Boost reloaded, what that then lets me do is basically it goes from, I have clean without either of them, my rhythm tone is just this, and add this and it's my lead tone, and then all the rest is kind of colour really. Finally, before the amp is the Jackrabbit Trem, which I have set just on a sine wave. If I turn up the depths, you'll hear of the kind of effect of that. But I tend to keep it pretty subtle. I will sometimes use the tap tempo function on it, but other than that, it's just, just set it and forget. And that then goes into the front of the Ignited tweaker, my main tweaker. I'm running 2 again at the moment, but we'll come to that in a minute. And then from the amp effect send, it comes into the Strymon timeline, my trusty delay. And the way I've got it set at the moment is basically in this bank, which is my main bank. Again, I use tap tempo for it. I have this delay. And I'm actually using the boost function of the timeline in a slightly odd way. So this is actually half a dB quieter than if there was no delay at all. Now half a dB is barely discernible. But then I have patch B is the same thing but with a 2.5 dB boost. So there's actually 3 dB difference between the two, which is enough to give a bit of a solo kick. And that's just, I've gone through and done that on a few banks, and it's just a case of basically A is without boost and B is with boost. So it saves me having a separate boost pedal on the rig. Then that outputs in stereo into the Ditto looper, which obviously doesn't sound like anything except the last thing I recorded. Which was my After the Storm loop that I uploaded earlier today. And from there then we go to this, the newest device on the board, which is a Goodwood Audio Output version 2. And that basically means, but it's a buffered output. It uses very little current. It takes the stereo outs from the Ditto and outputs stereo to the amps. But if I'm only using one amp, or for whatever reason I want to just spread a mono signal, it has a little switch on the front so I can switch from stereo to dual mono. So stereo will really get the stereo delays. But then I can collapse that down to mono. And that saves having to do any repatching, because otherwise if I wanted to run mono I'd have to remove one of the outputs from the timeline as well as from the Ditto. and it'll be a whole lot of faff, whereas now this both serves as an interface output device, so I can plug into either the left or the right when I'm in dual mono mode, or if I'm just using a single amp, and then so I just connect up the cable I want to, and it being buffered as well just means that I've got, you know, a good solid signal going back to the amp regardless of how long my cable run is. So we go, it's a pretty simple stripped down board compared with many that I've used. It's certainly the happiest I've been with a board pretty much ever, I think. Yeah, it's just has everything I need and nothing I don't, which is certainly something that I've been guilty of over the years, is having stuff that I don't need just for fun. Now I've got an enormous number of pedals that I'm not using at the moment that may see their way onto other boards at some point in the future, but yeah, I don't see me changing this particular board anytime soon. So there we go, hope that was of interest. I say most of the time I'm just running the Sheba drive and the timeline for whatever I want to do. Till next time, take care, I'll speak to you soon.